Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Thanks so much for being with us. Our number is 888-318-7884. It's a call-in show, so we need you. Second hour, it'll be a pro-life open forum with Dr. George Delgado. This hour, it's Ask a Priest. You can ask anything that it would be appropriate to ask a priest about. Maybe you have a theological question, a doctrinal question, a Bible question, but maybe you have a question about your prayer life or your family life or sacraments. You're welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Our guest this hour is Jesuit priest, Father David McConey. Father McConey is a professor of historical theology at St. Louis University and the director of that school's Catholic Studies Center. He's also the editor of the Homiletic and Pastoral Review and the author of a whole bunch of books. Father David McConey, thank you for being with us. No? All right. I can't hear him. We'll get him. We'll get him in a second. So ask a priest. Let me just give you the number again. Let me just see if anybody's calling. 888-318-7884, the number. 888-318-7884. It's probably going to take them a second to get Father on the line, which is fine because it takes us a second to process the calls. Do we have Father? All right, we'll have him in a second. Big news today, and maybe we'll talk with Father about that a little bit, and I'm interested to hear what Dr. Delgado has to say about it in the second hour. You maybe have heard the news. The Supreme Court refused to hear a case about abortion in Texas. And if you don't know, around the world, here in the United States, we have about the most radical abortion laws in the world, and that's according to the Washington Post. That's not some crazy Catholic, take. That's a mainstream media take, and it seems that might be changing bit by bit, little by little. We might be seeing an improvement in that. So that is really, really good news, and maybe you'll want to call Dr. Delgado the second hour about that. You can ask Father if you have a pro-life question for Father as well. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. It may not be the most significant thing that has ever happened, this kind of failure to take action by the Supreme Court, but it certainly seems to be speaking volumes because in the state of Texas today, for the first time since the very early 1970s, when the Roe versus Wade decision was handed down, there are virtually no abortions being performed in that state, and they are not available except in certain very circumscribed circumstances. So for those of us who are pro-life, this is a big day here in the United States, and many of you around the world just may not know this about the United States, that pretty much, for the most part, in many parts of the United States, almost all of the United States, a child in the womb can have its life taken all the way up to the moment of delivery. As a matter of fact, during the moment of delivery. And I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but I've had this experience recently several times with women, just visiting with women who are pregnant and them saying something like, I'm 20 weeks along or whatnot. And this is a woman that's clearly carrying a baby. And this, in the United States, we do not treat that as a relevant fact. We treat that as an inconvenience, I suppose, or a fact that is not to be admitted. And that's why we are radicals here in the United States. Many people around the world know that we're a predominantly Christian country, and we're, in general, on many things, much more conservative than the rest of the world. But when it comes to abortion, we are radicals, and we have been radicals, and we have not had a choice about that because the courts have not allowed anything but the most radical understanding about that. So this is pretty good news for us, and we're very, very happy about that. If you want to call about that and ask about that, you want to talk about your own pro-life experience, you're welcome to call. But the second hour will be a pro-life open forum with Dr. George Delgado, and I'm looking forward to talking with Dr. Delgado about it because he is one of those people who's been on, and he has paid a cost for it. He has been on the front lines of the pro-life effort. Or on National Public Radio, as I heard us called today, anti-abortion advocates, which I personally, I never think, I never shy away from that label. Pro-life is a perfectly good label, but I am anti-abortion. And I'm, in addition to being pro-life, anti-abortion meaning We can't kill vulnerable people. We can't kill the innocent. We cannot kill, except in self-defense or in legitimate and legal warfare. And a few other instances, but in general, no. And so being pro-life does, in fact, mean being anti-abortion. It certainly does, and I don't feel bad about it. As a matter of fact, I'm happy when they call me an anti-abortion advocate. Again, I want to give out our number, 888-318-7884. Let me reset a little bit for you about what we're going to do. This first hour, we're going to have Father David McConey with us, and it's going to be Ask a Priest, just as we did yesterday for 2 hours with Father Hugh. When we have these wonderful priests available to us, we like to do that. And then second hour will be a pro-life open forum. On Ask a Priest, you can ask anything you want, and you don't have to be Catholic to call. 888-318-7884. You guys want to tell me what line Father McConey is on? Or he's on? Oh, he's on Skype. Okay, so I can go to the phones.
Can you hear me okay now?
Hey, there he is.
All right.
Father McConey, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the connections. I don't know what's going on.
It's okay because I've been wanting all day to talk about the possibility that Roe versus Wade is on its way out. So I got to talk about that for a little while. You've let me scratch an itch that I've had all day. But you ready to take some calls? Because we got people.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
All right. We'll start with Gerald in Vero Beach, Florida. Gerald, thank you so much for your call. Father David McConey is our guest. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much. Father, I'd like to ask a question about the sacrament of reconciliation. Offered in the absolution, many of the priests use the formal prayer of the Church, God the Father of mercies through the death and resurrection, which is a very beautiful prayer. When I go to the sacrament, I listen to that very carefully, and I think it's a beautiful prayer. On occasion, I've been to priests who don't use it. They'll say, in the ministry of the Church, I absolve you. And it doesn't, I always say it bothers me a little bit. And if I know a priest does not use that form of the Church, I try to avoid that. And I don't know how serious that is. I don't think it's serious. I think the sacrament is still valid. But if if there's some impediment there, I felt I would love to, and I don't know if it's appropriate to just write the bishop and ask his priest in the diocese to use that
formula
of the Church.
Father, do priests have an option about the formula that they use, and does it make any difference?
Not there, but first off, your appreciation of language is wonderful. It is the sacrament of reconciliation. It's not just confession, as if getting things out covers everything, and it's not the sacrament of penance, as if to do burdens covers everything. It's to reconcile us to the Father through the crucifixion of Christ. Now, what's essential in the prayer is the ego absolvo te, I absolve you. And so the words leading up to that, in one way, could be secondary. Now, we all know the formula, we all appreciate the formula, but what's really essential are those words of absolution. It's as if to think of the Mass. There are different words leading up to the words of consecration, and those are in one way secondary to and this is my body, this is my blood. So I would have you concentrate on those words. Your sacrament and your absolution are valid. But if you have a preference, stay with the priest that offer that one. Writing the bishop, I don't know. I don't know if the priests are doing anything wrong. It's just very unfamiliar.
Gerald, thanks for getting us started. Thanks very, very much. Let's go to New York. Austin in New York, watching on YouTube. You are up next. Austin, go ahead with your question for Father David McConey.
Hi. My question is the kingdom of God or church a society, or is there like a societal aspect to the kingdom of God or church?
Sure, right. There's a communal aspect to God himself in the Trinity. The church was founded so many individuals from every land and nation and tongue could come together in a harmony. And that is a reflection of God himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, who are perfect, diverse persons in one perfect unity. And so the church, the diversity, the communal nature, the societal nature really does matter, because that's what God wants. He wants billions of sons and daughters gathered to himself forever.
So does that comfort you there, Austin?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And that's why love of God and love of neighbor are inseparable, because they really do gauge and mirror one another.
Austin, you brought us right up to the break, so thank you for that. Austin, we'll take that break. We'll continue with Father David McConey, our guest, and your questions. It's Ask a Priest this hour. One line open right now, 888-318-7884.
Hang on, Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
One of the reasons we should go to Mass is because it is the food of the saints that we receive. And for the saints, they understood rightly that the time after Holy Communion, that those moments are the most precious moments of our lives.
The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, live from the EWTN Chapel, every morning, 8 Eastern, on EWTN Radio and Television.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Third day in a row this week. Third day in a row with great programs, Darren. That's a really good job. Father David McConey is our guest. And I do want to stress again, because a lot of times when we have these Ask a Priest hour, it feels like sometimes that non-Catholics do not feel quite as welcome to call. And I don't want it to feel that way. If you're not a Catholic, if you're not a Christian, and there's something you'd like to ask a Catholic priest, 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. And Father McConey is a good one. He's a good priest to ask. He teaches historical theology at St. Louis University, and as I mentioned before, he directs that school's Catholic Studies Center, and he's the editor of the Homiletic and Pastoral Review, where he has to work for Mark Brumley. So he's got saintly patience. So your call, welcome, 888-318-7884. Let's see who else we got online here. Let's go to Mary in Denver, listening on 1060 AM. Mary, we're very grateful for your call. Go ahead with your question for Father McConey.
Hi. I have been calling into different shows, and I guess I call in at the wrong time. So I'm glad for you to take my call. Thank you. My question is, I realize Satan is a fallen angel, but why does he have so much power?
Precisely because he is an angel. And in our fall, we allowed the devil to enter into this world. We are the ones who ultimately gave him, not his power, he has that by his nature as being a spiritual substance, an angel, but we gave him the license to act in this world of sin.
Mary?
Now is your question, why doesn't God do something more about it?
Well, I guess so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the Christian answer oftentimes seems unsatisfying when evil seems so immediate, but the answer is there was no greater result or no greater antidote than the cross, and we just need to wait and see how that plays out.
Does that satisfy you?
But
go ahead, Mary. Go ahead.
I guess I just question if Christ died on the cross for all those sins, then why is the devil still so prevalent?
Well, think of our own lives. If Christ died on the cross for our sins, why do I still sin? There's an attraction there. There's God respects our free will. That's the one thing that God doesn't want to manipulate, because it would no longer be free. He would ruin one of his own creatures.
Okay, Mary?
Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Can we get a list of the shows that didn't let you on? I'd like to talk to those people that didn't let you on. That was not right.
No,
Mary.
It was my time.
Oh.
It was my time.
Oh, okay, so. Sure. All right. I think it was probably Dr. Ray. Let's go to Luca in Florida, watching on YouTube. Luca, thank you so much for your patience. Go ahead with your question for our guest, Father David McConey.
Yeah, so thank you for taking my call. My question is just, if Father David McConey were asked to identify an area where the leadership of the Catholic Church is significantly falling behind, most significantly falling behind where it should be, what area would that be? Like, is it a professional type of professional question, a moral question, a question of orthodoxy.
Are you talking about bishops when you say Catholic leadership, or just everybody who's running the church?
Just the current leadership of the church and the structures and the way it's run, I guess.
Yeah. That's a tough question because, as G.K. Chesterton was once asked what's wrong with the world, he says, I am. That it's too easy to push this up the line. I mean, if we had a real, what would I say? If we had a real need for something, it would be for average Christians in the pews to rise up and become fire and to offer themselves more and more to the Spirit. And the leadership, the bureaucracies, the Vatican offices, those can only do so much. Is there scandal and sin there? Sure, like any organization, but the church is ultimately triumphant because she's ultimately the body of Christ, and that's who we are, you are. And so I would say to improve anything, we all need to grow in holiness.
Luca?
How to do that? Well, Catholic Answers.
There you go, Father. That was a good ad. But Luca, what do you make of that?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the answer. That's very great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I always find that answer very, unsatisfying in the sense that I want it to be somebody else's fault, Father. I don't want the problems in the church to be on me.
Exactly.
All right, let's go to Loveland, Colorado. Also listening on 1060 AM. Angela, thanks for your call. Go ahead with your question for Father David McConing.
Hi, thanks, Father. This is Angela, and I'm reading a book called Infiltration, and I can't think of the last name of the writer.
Oh, I'll think of it.
Anyway, it talks about... You'll think of it for me?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. It's somebody I know really well. I mean, I know his work really well, and I'm drawing a blank. Help me, Darren. Who? What's that? Taylor Marshall, Dr. Taylor Marshall. I'm sorry. I sometimes draw a blank like that.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Angela.
But he's talking about like the Knights Templar and things like this, and the Freemasonry coming in, that they've been slowly infiltrating the church, and I'm wondering, how is that possible? And is this really something I need to worry about? Is it something that is just really not true?
Okay.
Is it detrimental to our faith? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Say a little bit more. I'm not familiar with this book.
Well, he's talked about since, Mother Mary appeared at Portugal, that she said over in Portugal she would be the one, or that Portugal would be the place that the true faith would stay. So I'm thinking, okay, so do I have to now move to Portugal or what? And they're saying that in this book, slowly, it's being taken over by Freemasonry.
Yeah.
To run the church the way that they think it should be, rather than what Christ and the apostles did. Because, lay Eucharistic ministers, I'm one myself. They're talking about that should not be. It should be only for men, and that I agree. No woman should be priests. That's just not okay. But there's just several things that point to cause discretion, and it's making me disheartened, if you will, not of the church, but of this. Why is this out there?
Okay, Angela, I'm going to let Father respond. But you get the basic thesis of Dr. Marshall's book is that the church has been and is continuing to be infiltrated by forces who undermine the apostolic faith.
Right. And I don't think that is ultimately possible. I don't think the church is localized in any one country, in any one movement, in any one group of theologians. The church is under attack for sure. We all are. But as ugly as things may be, I do think that we need to say this is the body of Christ, and she's going to be victorious even with all the scars. And so it's easy in this day and age to catastrophize all the things going on, but ultimately Christ will be victorious. So I don't think we should move. I don't think we should start hoarding food. I think we should keep living our lives as we do and let Christ reign. How, again, the practicalities of that depend on each of us. So blessings on your discernment.
Angela, that ease your mind a little bit?
Yes, it does. And I just wanted to to ask a priest that, I knew would be able to answer.
You know, at the risk of embarrassing
but...
Father Macconi, you're asking one of the great historians in the world today of the church, and so I really want you to feel confident that you can trust that answer. There's this idea of being disturbed. There's no need for it. You can absolutely trust in Jesus and His church.
Amen. You have to. There's no other lifeline.
Okay, Angela?
His church. Yeah, that's absolutely where my faith is. I have
God.
no other love but God.
Oh, you are inspiring. Angela, thank you. Is there anything else we can do for
you? You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, all right.
That was all I wanted to know.
All right. Well, praise God for that. God bless you. And there's some other shows that won't even let you on. I don't know which ones they are, but I'm glad you got on with us, Angela.
Bye.
Bye. The number is 888-318-7884. There's only 2 lines open. There's only 1 or 2 staying open at any time today. Father David Macconi is our guest. And it's Ask a Priest. You can ask a priest. There's oftentimes folks are like, if I only had a Catholic priest, I could ask that question too. Well, now is your opportunity. 888-318-7884. Let's go to Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Vicky in Omaha. Thank you for your call, Vicky. Go ahead with your question for Father Macconi.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking my call. It's a privilege to speak with you today. I just really find comfort in listening to your conversation and the words of wisdom that you shared with the last caller. I wanted to ask specifically, what Father would recommend to practicing Catholics as far as like prayers and scripture that we can, or even other books, Christian or Catholic books that we can read and hold on to during this time where, there is so much uncertainty and there is a lot of, fear kind of being shared throughout our nation, and a lot of unrest and undermining of God and our nation. I hope that question makes sense.
It sure did, Vicky.
I'm really looking forward to grabbing onto some good scripture, and of course all of it's good, but especially for our times and things that I can share with my loved ones who are almost fear paralyzed.
Okay, Father.
Well, I think we should always go to the Psalms. The Psalms are where Israel's victory is foreshadowed and realized, and things aren't much different now. We're under attack. It might not be Pharaoh, but it might be masks and vaccines and government officials and the Taliban. But the enemy's always there within our own heart as well. And so the Psalms are the prayers of the church, and this is where we meet Christ emerging from the chaos into glory. So I would start there. The letter to the Ephesians of Paul. There's great invitation to victory. The book of Revelations, you might think that's where to go, but that's a tricky one. So do that with maybe a good commentary in hand or something.
Okay, Vicky?
Great. Thank you so much. You're just an answer to my prayers. I've been needing something to hold on to, and this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you. The prayers are what Jesus prayed. Am I right in saying that, Father?
Amen. Yep.
Augustine
says in the Psalms, Christ meets me everywhere.
Who says that? Oh, St. Augustine said that.
St. Augustine, yeah.
In the Psalms, Christ meets me everywhere. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Because it's the most, like in those Psalms, it's the most wide-ranging kind of inclusive thing as far as human emotions go, human states go. It covers everything.
Yeah.
We got time for another call before we have to go to a break. Let's go to Clay in Nashville, listening to EWTN, Channel 130 on Sirius XM Satellite Radio. Clay, you're on with Father David Macconi. Go ahead with your question.
Oh, thank you for having me, and appreciate Father David. My question is, my 5th child was born. His name's Christian, and we baptized him with a Latin baptism. I didn't know Latin baptism was even an option, and it was a beautiful Mass. And I started getting interested in Latin shortly after, just about a few months ago, and then I noticed that there seems to be a lot of controversy about the Latin Mass. Even this morning, I woke up to one of the Catholic news agency saying that in North America, college in Rome cancels Latin Mass. What is the what is the? I guess the why does it seem like Rome is starting to really start to throttle down, or even try to, completely get rid of the Latin Mass?
Father, I'm going to let you answer that, but in a couple seconds, the music's going to start playing. We got to take a break. So, Clay,
Francis wants to unify all the liturgies into a more common, unifying, and not a divisive us versus them kind of liturgy. That's his thinking.
All right. We'll be right back with more. Father David McConey on Catholic Answers Live. It's Ask a Priest. The number, 888-318-7884. Most of us Catholic parents agree our number one goal in life is to pass on the faith to our children. But here's the bad news. Today's world has a million ways to steal your kid's soul. Don't be afraid, says Father Sebastian Walsh. God loves your children even more than you do, and He desires their salvation more than anything. In his groundbreaking new book, Always a Catholic, Father Walsh shows you how to cooperate with God to bring about the fulfillment of His will for your kids. Always a Catholic reminds us that keeping our kids in the faith is about the way we live our Catholicism in our own lives and as a family from day to day. Order your copy of Always a Catholic by visiting shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. It's free, and you'll have instant access to our daily broadcast, the schedule of upcoming shows, and you'll even be able to search the archive and listen to thousands of past shows. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Hi, this is Janet Williams. We bring you the truth of the Catholic faith on Women of Grace tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern here on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We've still got Clay with us from Nashville, and the question was about Clay experienced a Latin liturgy, a baptismal liturgy, and became interested in Latin, and then asked Father David McConey, our guest, about what's all the controversy about Latin. We had to give the question short shrift before we went to the break, but Father, did you want to elaborate at all on your answer for Clay?
Well, when Pope Francis released the Motu Proprio this summer, trying to rein in use of Latin or the extraordinary form of the Mass and different sacraments performed in the Old Rite, the best interpretation is he was trying to unify us around one common liturgy. The fact that the Latin Mass, that's not actually the name. The name is the extraordinary form, and it is extraordinary. So he's trying to bring us into the changes of Vatican II and to have us not be divisive, that I go to the Latin Mass, you go to the English Mass, and that's his thinking. Now, I think the other side of the story is there's a lot of fruit in the extraordinary form. So I don't know.
Does that make sense to you, Clay?
Well, the only thing that doesn't make sense is the priest who did the baptismal approached us after the baptism, beautiful priest, and he says, and I told him how moved I was, even though I didn't understand all of the words or nearly half the words, and he said, Latin is used in most exorcisms because it is the language that Satan and the demons hate the most. So if that were the case, why would we be looking at throttling it back? That's kind of concerning.
Yeah, that's an early modern line. I think Satan, being a fallen angel, is not scared of any human language, but the content of the words, not the form of the words. Whether it be in the name of Jesus, doesn't have to be Jesu or Jesus or anything, but in the name of Jesus, Satan is cast out, regardless what language you use.
Clay, thanks very much. I'm going to keep moving. There is just one line open, but you're welcome to occupy it because I'm sure we will have time to get to you. 888-318-7884, the number. It's Ask a Priest this hour, and our friend Father David McConey is here at your service to answer your questions. Now we're going down to Costa Rica, watching on YouTube in Costa Rica. Jason, how are you, Jason, down there in Costa Rica?
Hi there.
Wow, you sound like you're next door. We get worse calls from the town right next to us. Boy, they got good phone service in Costa Rica. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Hi, thank you. So my question for Father is if you can talk a little bit about the concept of slavery in the Bible and how it should be interpreted, understanding that the concept is very different from what we know today about slavery, right? So, and my reason for asking this is because I've heard some people kind of demeritating the teaching of the Bible and the Catholic Church because of this concept of slavery. So if you can expand on the real concept of slavery in the Bible, and if you can recommend any sort of reading or videos to watch around it.
No, it's a very good question. I mean, the notion of slavery has been something around quite a long time, and Paul, in the letter to the Ephesians, tells slaves to be obedient to their masters. But he also calls Philemon a slave. I think he calls him his brother, Onesimus, a slave who's his brother. So sometimes when we think of slavery, we think only of African American or Africans brought over to America who were treated grossly and unjustly. But in the earlier world, there was a sense of slavery where there were more of maybe house servants. Now, I'm not justifying it, but I'm saying don't always think of the brutal beatings that we see in the movie that say Roots or whatnot. It's wrong, but there's a lot of wrong things in the scripture that God used to bring about his kingdom, like polygamy in the Old Testament or Jephthah's sacrifice of his daughter and things. And this is what makes Christianity, I think, real. We don't sugarcoat things. We let some things that were ugly and wrong stand there to learn from the past. And so one of the first papal bulls of the 15th century was the abolition of slavery, that the Pope was trying to get people to quit selling people. And then in Plurimus in 1888, Leo XIII once again condemns the New World slavery. So we do have a tradition of both cooperating and condemning slavery in the Catholic Church.
Jason?
Okay, great. And is there like any sort of reading that you would recommend on this in specific, or any sort of videos to get more information about it?
Boy, how about something like the history of the Catholic Church and slavery? I would just Google that and see what.
I'm sure we have things at Catholic.com. It's not occurring to me off the top of my head. I think Father's right. You can try us here at Catholic.com. Just put in the word slavery. I'm sure that a good amount of material will come up. I'd also suggest maybe consider Trent Horn's book. What's the name of Trent's book? The Hard Passages, Hard Sayings. Yeah, and it's about the things in the Bible, like slavery or like what appears to be virtually genocide in the Bible. So you might try Hard Sayings. But I don't have anything more specific if Father doesn't. All right, we'll leave it there, Jason. Thanks very much. Appreciate the call. It's Ask a Priest this hour. We're going to Des Moines, Iowa now. Jack listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Jack, go ahead with your question for Father David McConey.
Hi, Father. Thanks for taking my call. And so my question is, if you in the Old Testament, Moses, the other prophets, especially in Samuel and the Book of Kings, they talk about the people of Israel being the chosen people as per God, and those people eventually became the current-day Jews. And so I'm curious, as we go through history from them being the chosen people, what exactly did God mean by that? Are the Jews still the chosen people? How does that definition engage with us as Catholics when we're talking with our Jewish friends? And so I'm curious how to make that connection.
Right, that's a great question. yes, the Jews are God's chosen people. Salvation comes from the Jews. And in so doing, what I think God wanted to show us that his love is purposeful, it's selective. It's not an amphibious or kind of an ethereal kind of love that just pours out of him. He's a father, and fathers, they choose to love their children. It's not like a mother's physical emission response that mothers automatically love, but God's love is purposeful, it's selective, and he chose Israel. Not that he condemned other nations, but he said, look, I'm going to choose the littlest and the smallest and the weakest of all the nations to show my power. And if you want to join, great. And some nations did. And then in the fullness of time, the nation, the land, the people became the world, the church. So I would say, yeah, our Jews are our older brothers and sisters in the faith.
Okay, Jack?
How do we respond then if our Jewish friends feel that compared to Christians, the Jews are still the chosen people?
Yeah, well, I guess like any father, you can choose all your children to love just differently. It's a matter of office. You love the first as your firstborn, your last as your baby, and so on. So maybe that's the way God looks at Christians and Jews. These are my firstborn, and these are my new ones. So, yeah. I mean, how to answer the Messiah question, I think the Jews are following what God has asked them to do. They're not completely yet aware of what God has done, but they have been faithful to at least what they've known.
Jack, thanks. Thank you very much for the question.
Jack, one of the shortest Vatican documents is Nostra Aetate out of Vatican II on world religions, and there's a nice little discussion of Judaism in there.
Oh yeah, that's easy document to find. Just of the 16 documents of the Second Vatican Council, just put that in your Google machine, and you can get Nostra Aetate and read what the Church has to say about our relationship with the Jewish people and God's relationship with the Jewish people. Thanks, Jack. Let's see where we're going next. We've been all over, even down to Costa Rica this hour. Let's go to Lakewood, Colorado. What's going on at 10:60 a.m. in Colorado? Are they having some kind of meeting? This is like our third call in 25 minutes from Colorado under 10:60 a.m. Nancy in Lakewood, thanks very much for your call. Go ahead with your question, please, for Father David McConey.
Thank you for taking my call, and I'd like to ask Father David, I arranged all my funeral plans like 5-6 years ago so that when I go, my kids don't have to do anything. It's all going to be arranged and done, and it's paid for. And at our parish, this past weekend, we had the Mount Olivet people come out and give a talk, and they were handing out these pamphlets. And I looked at the section on cremation, and the very first line said, cremation is allowed by the church, but it has less value than if the body were there. And it really upset me because I thought, what does that mean? The Mass can't be devalued or the priest's prayers.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I do.
Okay, so if I'm just to be clear, Nancy, so you made all these arrangements, and among them is for your own cremation.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Father?
Which the church allows. Cremation is, in one way, a fast forwarding what's going to happen to all of us, most of us anyway, returning to ash. And the church allows it, so there is not more value. The body is there, it's just in a different form, I would say. Now, the form isn't what we're used to, and that's what I think makes creation somewhat disturbing for some. We would rather see the corpse laid out as we remember her or him, but the ashes are a little more challenging. But nonetheless, the essence of the body is present.
Okay, Nancy?
Yes. Yes, so I don't have to change everything again.
No, please don't.
The church approved it. Okay, great. Thank you, Father David. I appreciate it.
Oh, Nancy, I'm sorry that disturbed you. Thank you very much for the call. Let's see. It's Ask a Priest. We'll go now to Patrick in Seattle, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. Patrick, go ahead with your question for Father David McConey.
Yes. Thank you for fixing the phone number on the app. I'm able to call in now. So let's see. The question for Father is, I've had some dreams in the past and recently of a religious nature, and I was kind of wondering what the Catholic Church's position is on interpreting dreams. Should we attempt to interpret them? Should we seek spiritual guidance? I'm just kind of wondering what guidance Father could give on that.
Well, that's a good question about which I know nothing. I mean, dreams are powerful. They're scriptural. God uses them to convey messages. But I wouldn't take them at face value all the time. I would talk with a spiritual friend. It doesn't need to be a therapist or a counselor. Certainly not one of the dream New Age people. But just say, what do you think God's trying to do in this? Where should I take this thought or this nudge?
Patrick, I'm glad the app worked. We got to take a break. I went too long. Thanks, Patrick, for the call. More calls for Father David McConey on Ask a Priest coming up. If you'd like to call, 888-318-7884. And don't forget the second hour, Pro-Life Open Forum with Dr. George Delgado. Right back.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
He was a 10th century saint, priest, mystic, and doctor of the church, honored as the first poet of Armenia.
Matthew Bunsen and the Doctors of the Church.
Gregory of Narek is revered by Armenians as a watchful angel in human form. His masterwork, the Book of Lamentations, was intended to be his last testament, an encyclopedia of prayer for all nations. He was named a Doctor of the Church in 2015.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father David McConey is a Jesuit priest and professor of historical theology at St. Louis University, in addition to many other hats that he wears. And he's here to answer your questions for a priest. If there's something you've always thought, I'd like to ask a priest, or maybe recently you've thought, I need a priest, I need to ask a priest that question, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Next, we're going to Kansas, watching on YouTube. It's Fred in Kansas. Fred, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question.
Well, I got a question, but it's not for me. It's for a young man that I know that he has same-sex attraction, and every time he goes to confession for his sins of the flesh, he wants to know, should he explain to if it's a new priest, should he explain to them that he had same-sex attraction so that he knows, the priest knows where he's coming from? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. Well, if he's confessing a sexual sin, he would, I imagine, if it were masturbation, he wouldn't need to say it because that doesn't really depend on your orientation. But if he's engaging other men, I would say this is a factor that he should bring up, yes. Now, the Catholic Church, I think, is quite wise. There's no sin in the orientation. That is something that is, who knows, chemical, biological, cultural. That is morally neutral, but it can lead to graver sin, unnatural acts between two genders, two people of the same gender. So that should be mentioned, I would say. And hopefully the priest will be very understanding and compassionate.
Okay, Fred?
Well, as far as I know, he's not doing anything. I think it's on his mind. You know what I'm talking about? So he needs to tell the priest.
Okay, Fred. Father, how do you respond to that?
Have him look at the Catechism if he's worried about this, 2357 and onward. The 2359, homosexual persons are called to chastity. That they do not choose homosexual conditions, the Church teaches, and for most this is a trial. So,
Fred, I think that's clear. I hope that's helpful to you. Thank you very much for the call, and I appreciate that call very much. Let's see where we're going now. Stacy in South Carolina, listening to EWTN on Sirius XM satellite radio, channel 130. Stacy, thank you so much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Father McConey.
All right, thank you for taking my call. My question is on the tithe, the Old Testament tithe, and how that applies to Catholics today. So what's the Catholic teaching on the tithe?
I don't know if we have an official teaching. The word tithe comes from tenth, 10% of what one earns. And it's obviously in the collection, brought up in the offertory, which is a symbol of one's labors throughout the week. I don't know if the church expects to have exactly 10%, but the church does expect everyone to partake in some way in the well-being and the financial costs of the church. So I always advise people, do what you can. Do what you can. Some people have found great graces in doing 10%, which is a bit of a stretch for them. But
okay, Stacy.
So I don't know if the church has an official teaching apart from we should tithe, and that means 10%. But if you can't, I don't think it's a sin.
So the Catechism teaches that we need to tithe?
Sure.
In the sense of giving.
Right. In fact, Catholic Answers has a nice question on this.
10%.
In the sense of 10%.
No, I don't think the church is that particular. No. God does not demand a fixed amount.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I know that some religions demand the 10%, and sometimes I hear the 10%, and people ask, is that on gross? Is that on net? Is that on, what if I have a billion kids? What if I have one kid?
Right.
It's literally the 10%.
I would say that's a standard, but you're not held to it literally.
Okay.
It's a guide. It's like when prayers are said for 300 days off purgatory. Well, maybe not, but it gives you a clue. It gives you an index.
Stacy, thanks very, very much. Let's go to Mike in St. Charles, Missouri, listening on 1450 AM. Mike, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Sure. Father, thank you for taking my question. Appreciate your vocation and your service to the church. Just had a question. As a fellow Jesuit, I didn't know if there was any Father Martin's out there, Father James Martin.
Oh, I thought you were a fellow Jesuit, Mike. You're saying the Father James Martin. Okay, I got you.
I'm not a fellow Jesuit.
Okay, so you want to ask Father about...
Jesuit.
Okay.
Right. I was going to ask him about... I don't really hear much from the church or from the Jesuits about, silencing this guy, really, or suppressing what he says or even contradicting him, but he gets invited to places and he says a lot of controversial things about the church teaching on homosexuality and I don't know, so it's a little confusing to me when someone like Father Altman, for example, in La Crosse gets suppressed, removed from his church, but Father Martin's allowed to continue to say what he says.
All right, Mike, I'm going to let Father respond to that. Father?
Yeah, that is a common wonder. And Father Martin, so one of the Ignatian rules of spirituality is to try to always interpret your neighbor's actions and words in the most charitable light. And Father Martin is looking out for the dignity of the homosexual community. He feels they're being picked on. He may say some things that kind of get to the edge of Catholic teaching, but he rarely crosses that line. And he is a mirror to many who want to condemn a particular community. So I would say that's the best thing. Could he be clearer? Could he quotes the Catechism when he needs to, and so he does try to present. He tries to present himself as a faithful Catholic. And so I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt. He just met with Pope Francis, and I know a lot of people, conservative people like myself, wonder what was said, but I do give Father Martin the benefit of the doubt that he's trying to create a dignity and a respect and say, quit picking on just these people. What about the divorced and remarried? What about the contraceptors? And the church does all of that, right? The church, in her message, includes all sexual aberrations. And so, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks very much. Father, we never get questions by name about Dr. Taylor Marshall or Father Martin, and then you get them. I don't know why everyone wants to ask you by name.
Jesuit thing, I think.
All right,
Father Martin's very bright, and he's he's a good man. So I do have a respect for him. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about some other controversial figures. What do you think about Henry VIII? No, let's not do that. Thanks, Mike. Call back anytime if you'd like. I'm going to try. I'm just trying to keep moving and get everybody on that I can with Father David McConey. Up next is Dustin in Virginia. Dustin, you there with us?
Hey, how you doing?
Very well. Go ahead with your question for Father.
The short version is, why is suffering such a key part of God's plan? When we are created flawed, formed flawed, why can't you choose like ice cream and joy instead of suffering?
Why so much stick? Why not more carrot? Is that what you're asking, Dustin?
Yeah, the more succinct version. Thank you.
Yeah, well, why, Father? I don't know. I don't get it either. Why so much suffering?
Well, it's the great paradox of the cross. Suffering is how God tenderizes our soul. We all need to be rearranged, and through suffering, he does it. He makes us more tender, more aware, more understanding. I mean, think about when things are going well. You're usually thinking about yourself. But when things are going poorly, that's usually when you cry out for help and allow others in. I mean, rarely have any of us said, hey, could you pray for me? I'm having a really, really good day. It doesn't go that way.
Right.
And so through suffering, because it's been consecrated by Jesus Christ, we are being opened up, and like I say, our souls rearranged for what is truly good.
I hope that helps you, Dustin. It is one of the great mysteries. I'm going to go to Alex in Loganville, Georgia, listening on 1160 AM. Alex, thanks for your call. Go ahead with your question as quickly as you can, please, for Father.
Okay. Hey, guys, appreciate you taking my call. I have a question about confessors. So I've kind of been, I just started practicing the faith like 2.5 years ago. I've been going to confession, and I've, in my research been, looking up, sorry, I'm really nervous. I've been reading more about confessors and how they, I guess, that kind of relationship. How do you initiate that? I've read that you have to, screen them in a way, like there's good confessors, bad confessors, entering into that, I guess, confessor relationship as opposed to just, going to a different priest every Saturday or every Saturday you go, what have you. What does that look like?
Well, I wonder if you're not maybe conflating confession with spiritual direction. Spiritual direction is an extended commentary on one's state in life, one's souls, one's questions. Confession can be in and out. Now, if somebody enjoys a little bit more of direction, then I would say ask a particular priest, when are you having confession? I'll come to you, and I'll come right at the beginning before anybody else gets there, and we can have more of a conversation than just naming my sins and being absolved and leaving. Do they need to be vetted? No, I think the church does that for you. Do some guys have more charisma than others? Sure. Are some guys wiser than others? Sure, but they're all valid and able to absolve you.
Now, so since you made the distinction, if you wanted spiritual direction, how would you go about that then? If do you see what I'm saying, Father?
Sure. Well, oftentimes people go right toward the priest or the nun, and oftentimes the priest and the nun are just too busy. I would say, who's a spiritual friend? Who's someone's prayer life you respect? Who's the old lady in the back of church who could meet with you every first Saturday and just talk about Jesus? It's better, as Catherine Siena said, to have a wise spiritual director than a pious spiritual director. So it's not an easy thing to find because people are pressed for time and direction takes a while. And I would ask, what is it you're seeking in spiritual direction? That might help you clarify what it is you want and who you could seek it from.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I think I can do it. Theodore, you got to just ask the question as quick as you can if you want an answer from Father.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. My concern is I am going back to college really soon, and they just mandated the COVID-19 vaccine. And as a
so the question
and not wanting, is it morally okay to receive it, even though
the
it's
COVID
kind
vaccine?
of against?
Okay, Father.
The bishops have allowed it. The CDF has allowed it. The USCCB has allowed it. So I would say yes. The Johnson & Johnson seems to be more directly related to the abortion stem cells, so you might want to go with Moderna or Pfizer.
Theodore, I'm sorry to rush you, but I was just very afraid that we wouldn't get you to be able to get an answer to your question. I think we got to almost everybody. I think we're leaving one on the line, but thank you for the call. Next hour, Dr. George Delgado will be here, and we're going to do a pro-life open forum. Dr. Delgado, of course, a board-certified physician, but also an ethicist. So if you have pro-life questions, next hour is perfect for you. Father Doctor. PhD doctor, but
could be.
Yeah, could be. David McConey has been our guest. Father, may we and our listeners have your blessing before we go.
Through the intercession of all the angels and saints, now may God bless you, Si, and all your listeners, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. It's very nice to see you again, Father McConey. We'll see you again soon, I hope.
Blessing. Thank you.
As I said, coming right up, Dr. Delgado, so start dialing now if you've got a question about how to treat life in its earliest stages, in its latest stages, or when life reaches difficulties anywhere along the line. You're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. And as promised, Dr. George Delgado here with us for a pro-life open forum. If you want to ask a question about how do you deal with a life situation early in life, late in life, or when life is facing challenges anytime in the middle, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Dr. Delgado is the medical director of Culture of Life Family Healthcare. You can find them online. He's a board-certified family medicine doctor and a hospice doctor and a palliative care doctor, and he's completed the certification program in healthcare ethics at the National Catholic Bioethics Center. So ready to take your life questions. 888-318-7884. Dr. Delgado, I am excited to talk with you. Thanks for being here with us.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
I'm excited because turned on the news, see what's going on with the hurricanes and the wars and the diseases, and it turns out the Supreme Court kind of let stand a very pro-life law in Texas. Interesting.
Yes. It's very, very exciting. I will temper the enthusiasm in a few seconds, but it's very exciting because this law outlaws abortions in Texas once a fetal heartbeat is detected on ultrasound. So that means if they see a heartbeat, they cannot do the abortion, which effectively means nothing after about 6 weeks of gestational age, and this is really a big deal. This is protecting a large number of our preborn brothers and sisters. So thanks be to God, and thanks be to the great state of Texas for having the courage to go through with this and for standing up for life. So we're really excited about that. It takes effect today, and in fact, reports are that I was reading a post by Abby Johnson that abortion centers are counseling appointments now for these women who are past 6 weeks, and giving them, of course, a second chance and giving their babies a second chance. And I think they decided they're not going to fight this, at least right now. However, the reason the Supreme Court did not take this case was because they have this big Mississippi case coming on the horizon, and they're going to hear arguments for that coming up in the fall. And so I guess they just didn't want two similar cases pretty much at the same time, which is very good for us on the side of life. But again, we're going to have to pray that God guides the Supreme Court so that they will rule in favor of life when they do hear the Mississippi case, which will have far-reaching implications throughout the land as far as possibly overturning Roe v. Wade.
Well, the one of the things we've been doing here at Catholic Answers Live and on our podcasts is trying to just set the stage for the coming year by reviewing, 50 years now of pro-choice, pro-abortion rhetoric to remind people of the arguments and they're not always arguments, emotional appeals in many cases that they'll be hearing over the course of the next 9 months or so until we get a decision, because I do think there is a growing sense that for the first time in a very, very long time, certainly since the 1980s, there's an actual founded hope that this abortion decision, Roe versus Wade, that has done so much damage to our society and ended so many lives, might actually be overturned.
Yes, I think we do really have good reason to hope, both because of the progression that we've seen of incremental gains, and we can never underestimate how important those incremental gains are for those who argue that you should always go for the touchdown. Hold on here. These incremental gains have gotten us where we are, and
right.
So we need both. And the second thing is because of the composition of the current Supreme Court that appears to be favorable, although you never know exactly what you're going to get till you get the ruling, of course. So those things are very, very important. And you're right, we are going to hear a lot of rhetoric because the pro-abortion supporters are really on the defensive right now. And they know that they're losing, and they're going to start getting more aggressive. They're going to pull out all of the slogans, all of the emotion that they've tried in the last 50 years, and they're going to retry it and see which sticks. So we're going to have to really stick to the impassioned, logical argument, as well as presenting a beautiful picture of the humanity that's in the womb,
right,
and the human part of it. And so I think if we do that, which i.e. just means charitably presenting the truth, then we should prevail. So that's really, I think, what it's going to be all about for us on the pro-life side. We support life. Life is good. Life means love. So that's how we have to go about it.
Our number is 888-318-7884. Your questions for Dr. Delgado. Welcome. And by the way, if you have a question about abortion, if you have a question about life in its earliest stages, those are welcome. But there are many life questions now before us: suicide, euthanasia, the treatment of the disabled, the use of embryonic stem cells and those kinds of things. So wherever your question is, it's welcome. You should feel that this is a pro-life hour. And if you've got a question about how to defend life at any stage, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. I'm going to tell you something that I noticed. I read a lot of the coverage today. I tried to read what was being said in the left media, in the right-wing media, in the I was going to say the center media, but I don't know if we have any center media. I can't find it if there is any. Oh, yes, I can. I can find it. It's the Catholic press. That's right down the middle. But here's
some of them at least.
Yeah, right. Sure. Like, we're not perfect. But here's the thing that I noticed, which I think is incredibly self-defeating for the pro-choice side. They don't say women anymore. They say pregnant person. This is a pregnant person's right. As if the whole idea of womanhood, which was the big thing that they hung their hat on for 50 years, has really just all of a sudden, it's not in any of their writing. They're not saying woman.
Yes, and that's part of a larger trend. If you're following any of the COVID stuff and you read some of the reports from the CDC, you'll see that when they talk about pregnant women getting COVID or getting the vaccine, they talk about pregnant persons. So this is part of the politically correct defeminizing of people, which is a companion to the other strategy of demasculinizing men, so that men and women no longer have their unique characteristics and their unique roles.
But it just seems like the various kind of confusions collide with one another, and it starts to become like a blender of unreason, where you're just like, well, like even the person who wants to defend what used to be this sacred woman's right to choose, now that person's on the out. You got to defend the pregnant person's right. That does not seem to me like a winning strategy to be so utterly kind of chaotic.
It is chaotic, and that's because when you are in the darkness and lack truth and are built on lies, eventually it devolves into chaos, because order is predicated and based on truth.
Well said. 888-318-7884, our number. Let's start with Loretta in Melbourne, Florida. Thank you, Loretta, for your call. Please go ahead with your question for our guest, Dr. George Delgado.
Yes, Dr. Delgado, this is a general question that came up in discussion with me today. I've worked in pro-life, and I would like to share this with our group. A few months ago on Catholic radio, and I can't tell you what program because I listen all day long, but the comment was made that John Paul II has said, either in a speech or in writing, that working in the pro-life ministry is perhaps the highest work or ministry that one can do in terms of pleasing God. I wonder if you had heard this, or if you would have any idea how you could research this to try to find out where this comment is that John Paul II made.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would venture to guess that was from Evangelium Vitae, which was his famous landmark encyclical on pro-life issues, often called the the translation is the Gospel of Life. So I would look there, and if I just pulled it up, and if you go to the introduction, the first paragraph, it starts out with the Gospel of Life is at the heart of Jesus' message. So that kind of is paraphrasing what you said there in a way. And so it wouldn't surprise me if deeper into the document he said something like that about pro-life work being one of the highest ministries. And if you think about it, it is, because life is the greatest gift God has given us, and so protecting life is really doing the Lord's work.
So
I would check out Evangelium Vitae, and you can just put that in your search engine and pull it up.
Even if I'll tell you what, you just put in the words John Paul II pro-life, and Evangelium Vitae will come up. You don't even have to remember the name of it. John Paul II pro-life. You'll find it. It's the one on the Vatican website, vatican.va. Loretta, thanks. God bless you in your pro-life work, sister. We got to take a quick break. However, we'll be right back with more Pro-Life Open Forum for Dr. George Delgado right after this.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connection's set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connection's website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Faith is a precious gift from God. As the largest religious media network in the world, EWTN has an important role in educating others about our Catholic faith and spreading the good news of salvation. We invite you to explore our numerous pages of historical faith documents, prayers, teachings, and other current issues in Catholicism today. Visit EWTN.com and click Catholicism. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's Pro-Life Open Forum. You want to know about the proper treatment of life, the respectful, the loving treatment of life in any of its stages or conditions. You are welcome to call with your question. You don't have to be Catholic to call. You don't have to be Christian to call. But a lot of this stuff is natural law stuff. 888-318-7884. Sylvia in Texas left us with a question, didn't stay on the line, but she left us with this question, so I just want to share Sylvia's question. In my third pregnancy, she said, the doctors said the baby had passed away, so I took medication to pass it. Was that an abortion?
No, it really was not in the way we use the term abortion to mean an elective or induced abortion, because the baby had already died. So what was happening here, and since, we don't know how far along she was in her pregnancy, but essentially, if she was past 20 weeks, then we would call it inducing labor. If it was before 20 weeks, then it would be stimulating uterine contractions to push the remains of the preborn baby out of the uterus. So that is actually the morally correct thing to do, because having dead tissue inside the woman would be a health risk for her. So since the baby had already passed it, there's nothing wrong with doing that at all, and it would not be considered an abortion, no.
Sylvia, thank you for the question. I'm sorry about the loss of your child. We do appreciate your call. It's a Pro-Life Open Forum. Our guest, Dr. George Delgado, from Culture of Life Family Healthcare, the medical director of Culture of Life Family Healthcare. Next up, in Washington, Missouri, Julie, listening on 1460 AM. Thank you for your call, Julie. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Delgado.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. In trying to choose things with COVID that don't have an association with the fetal line, and I understand the cooperation, the remoteness, but even in trying to make choices for prevention, I think on Monday I heard someone say on Catholic radio that there's an association of ivermectin with the fetal line. Is that true? I can't find it anywhere.
I have never read or heard that, and I have done pretty significant research on ivermectin, which is a very not a very old drug, but it's like a 25-year-old drug probably, that was initially developed as an anti-parasitic medicine. It's used a lot in the Third World, and there have been some studies showing that it is effective against the coronavirus, although other studies have shown that it's not effective. I have not come across that, and I would be highly doubtful if it did have any connection to aborted cell lines. I will say, however, though, the more we dig, the more we're going to find medications, biologicals, cosmetic products, soft drinks, other things that somewhere along the line may have been tested on cell systems that use cells that came from immortal cell lines that are initially started with cells from aborted babies, it's not to justify anything, but it's to tell people that it is much more common than we probably realize, and that we have to be quite vigilant about this, and know that these cell systems and cell cultures are very practical in the hands of scientists, so they really rely on them. Now, we need to discourage them from using those by swinging our consumer influence in the way of different products that do not use those cell systems, so that they will get that message. But until then, we live in a sinful world, in a world that sometimes relies on things that are anti-life, sometimes because scientists don't know better, or sometimes they get used to things. Just like we pay taxes to a government in certain states that uses part of that money to pay for abortions. So it sometimes can be tricky untangling all the connections, but we certainly should be diligent about doing that.
Okay, Julie?
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Julie.
you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I recently saw a list of medicines that had been tested using one of those cell lines that you're talking about that came from an aborted fetal human being. And it's really, you're kind of surprised when you see it. Like, wow, they tested everything. I mean, I'm sure that that's an exaggeration, but it feels like they tested every medicine you've taken has been tested on these lines.
Yes, it is, especially the newer medicines that it is relatively common.
All right, it's Pro-Life Open Forum, and there's lots of folks on the line, so we'll go to Ryan in Wilmington, Delaware, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Ryan, go ahead with your question for Dr. George Delgado.
Hi. Sorry. Hi. So I was calling about intraspecies parasitism, which is basically like the argument, which is basically like a counter argument, where someone would say, no, a fetus is not a parasite because a parasite is from a different species. But this gentleman online here says, most people make the mistake of believing that a parasite has to be a different species. This is not true, as intraspecies parasitism is indeed a reality. Some examples: anglerfish have sex-based parasitism, cuckoo bees have egg-based parasitism. The fact remains that same species parasitism is indeed a thing, despite dictionaries everywhere still insisting it is an interspecies event only. So how would you how would you respond to that?
Sure. The way I would respond is, first of all, looking at definitions. By definition, a parasite is an organism that somehow gets into or onto with another organism to derive benefit, and while it derives benefit, it causes harm to the other one. And it's not part of the natural life cycle of that organism. And generally, the vast majority of parasites are what we call interspecies. That means one species to another, not the same species. And we certainly don't have any example of intraspecies parasitism in humans. And the preborn child is part of the natural life cycle, part of the natural physiology of the reproduction system. When you look at the reproduction system, it is designed exactly in the woman for the woman to carry a baby in her womb, because the reproductive system in the woman, without a pregnancy, does not attain its finality. The reproductive system is the only organ and physiologic system in a human that needs the complementary reproductive system of the other sex in order to accomplish its finality. So in other words, if there is no pregnancy ever, then in a sense the woman has never used her reproductive system. If a man never fathers a child, in a sense has never used the reproductive system, has not attained its finality. So that is much in keeping with normal physiology, with what's expected, if you could say, of the woman's body. So this is not something that is foreign to the body. It's not something that is out of the ordinary, or something that that violates any of the biologic or physiologic rules or that causes any harm, because actually there are benefits to a woman's health to pregnancy, and we know that there are many benefits, including much lower risk of breast cancer, less risk of endometriosis, mental health benefits. The list goes on. And so the fact that this is a normal physiologic process totally would make it impossible to categorize it as a parasitic relationship.
Okay, Ryan?
Yes, that explains a lot. Thank you.
Ryan, so can I ask you something? You're a pro-life person trying to defend babies in the womb against the accusation that they're parasites. Is that right? Do you ever just sit back and think about how sick of a society it is that would argue that a baby in the womb is a parasite? Like that's actually
It definitely is a shower thought, yes.
Yeah. A what thought?
I like a shower thought, like a thought that you think in the shower.
Oh,
like
yeah, when you're doing your deep thinking. That's funny. Yeah, it's just like, I mean, sometimes I think pro-life people get involved in these arguments, and we're doing our best to answer in a reasonable, responsible way. But that's a deep and profound societal sickness if we have, as part of our normal discourse, people arguing that babies are parasites on their mother. And I think every now and then stepping back and just looking at that is helpful. Ryan, I'm going to keep going because I want to get as many on as I can with Dr. George Delgado, our guest. Monica in North Providence, Rhode Island, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Monica, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Delgado.
Hi, I have two questions. The first one I think is pretty quick. Are there any pro-life concerns with any of the COVID treatments that are available right now?
Well, there is, as far as treatments, not vaccines.
Right.
Is that what you mean? Okay. Well, the Regenicov or Regeneron monoclonal antibody treatment was purportedly tested initially and apparently briefly on a cell system that was started with a cell line that was associated with abortion. Now, this I read myself in an article that was quoting a Regeneron company spokesperson. So I haven't done more to verify that, but I think that that's something to look at. I have looked at the other available monoclonal antibody that's currently available, and that's called Sotrovimab. And I have not found out much about that, but I will say it's easy to find out if something is grown on a cell culture, for example, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine or the chickenpox vaccine or the rubella vaccine, because you can just read the product insert and see how it's produced, and it'll tell you it's produced with grown on this human cell culture from this cell line, and you go, okay, you make the connection. But they don't include how the concept was initially tested when they first came up with it. That takes a lot of digging, sometimes very difficult to find. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago to Cy, that you'd be surprised how many different products really are connected in that way with testing the concept. So so I wouldn't be surprised if we found out more, but right now that's what I discovered, that there's a possibility of the Regeneron product having been tested on such a cell system.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, the testing. So so my second question was, so concerning these vaccines, or whether, like you said, whether it's chickenpox or COVID or whatever, they all go back to that same one, like, cell from the aborted child. Why is that? Like, why is that one so important? Can't they create new cell lines?
Well, they can, and just to correct what you said, they don't all go back to one cell line. There are probably about 3 to 5 commonly used cell lines that were initially started with cells from aborted babies. So of those, the reason they keep going back to them is because they are familiar with them, they know how they work, they have some concerns about using adult stem cells to produce cell lines because of less less plasticity, less ability to do things with them. They're concerned about using animal cell lines because of diseases that could be transmitted from animals to humans. And they've, in a scientific way, kind of become complacent, lazy, and dependent on these lines. Now, there are other lines that have been used very successfully with other vaccines. There are monkey kidney lines and all sorts of other ones. And we're seeing insect cell cultures being used for some vaccines being produced. So they just have to get into their minds that they ought to use something that's ethically more appropriate. And that's where we as consumers can put pressure on them.
Dr. George Delgado is our guest. Monica, thanks for the question. We'll be right back with more Pro-Life Open Forum right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers is doing it again. We're holding our 7th annual Apologetics Conference this September in beautiful San Diego, California, and we'd like to see you there. Join us September 23rd to 26th for a lively and inspiring conference with an all-star lineup of speakers guaranteed to jumpstart your faith. It's a great chance to meet all your favorite Catholic Answers apologists and very special guests as we spend 4 days talking about worshiping and adoring our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. This is where it all begins. Don't miss what promises to be the event of the season. Join us this September for a conference that is sure to ignite, inspire, and inform your faith. Seats are still available, but they're going fast. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 888-291-8000 to register.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Hi, this is Janet Williams. We bring you the truth of the Catholic faith on Women of Grace tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern here on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Dr. George Delgado, the medical director of Culture of Life Family Healthcare here in the San Diego area, and also I don't know if you have to tell me, Dr. Delgado, if inventor is the right word, but the developer, maybe, of the abortion pill reversal procedure. What's the right way to say that?
I guess I would say I'm one of the pioneers.
Pioneer. Okay. All right. Very good. The number here is 888-318-7884 if you'd like to ask Dr. Delgado a question about the proper, respectful, and loving treatment of life from conception until natural death and anywhere in between. You're welcome to call 888-318-7884. We're going now to Terry in Minnesota listening on Real Presence Radio. We're about to go to Terry in Minnesota listening on Real Presence Radio. This says line 5. I don't see anybody on line 5. What line is he on? Is he? No. Oh, Terry dropped. Terry wanted to know the makeup of the court that decided Roe versus Wade. All I know about that, maybe you know, Dr. Delgado, all I know is that one of the dissenting judges was Byron White, and he was appointed by John Kennedy. And one of the dissenting judges was William Rehnquist, and he was appointed by Richard Nixon. So,
yes, that's right.
That's all I know.
The other 7 voted for, and the composition at the time was 6 appointed by Republicans, 3 by Democrats. So, thinking that just because a judge is appointed by a Republican, there's no proof or a guarantee that person will vote pro-life. However, I will say that I think the Republicans who appointed them, those judges back then, Nixon and Eisenhower, probably compared to especially President Trump's appointments, they probably tried much more to appease liberals in their appointments, whereas I think President Trump really had as a singular object to appoint strict constitutionalists. So I think you can't quite compare them. It's not like apples and apples comparison just because they were Republicans.
No, I mean, but just by the nature of the thing, every single one of them was appointed before there was, the Roe versus Wade controversy. And now we judge them by what we think they'll decide about Roe versus Wade. But it hadn't happened when all these were appointed. But I think Justice White in particular was very admirable in dissent. I'm sure Justice Rehnquist as well, but it does remind us kind of that there was a time when you didn't think of the parties as divided on abortion. You just didn't. There was no clear dividing line in the 50s and 60s.
Right, yeah. It wasn't until the Democrat Party started to take up that mantle as a special interest group and saw power and votes there, and now have become indebted to the pro-abortion movement.
Up next is Tene in Maryland, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Tene, you there with us?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Delgado.
All right, thank you. So I agree with the statement that no matter what situation, we shouldn't abort life, even in the circumstance of rape. But in the circumstance of rape, I don't know how to defend that. If someone asked me to explain myself.
Right. Okay. Excuse me, Dr. Delgado?
Yes, and it's good to know how to do that, because oftentimes they will use that argument as a wedge. Even though less than 1% of abortions are due to rape, it's something they try to bring up because, again, it can draw on lots of emotions, feeling so sorry for the woman and all that she's gone through, which is a great violation, of course. What I always like to say is you're executing the wrong criminal. You're executing someone who's not a criminal, and it's as if there were a bank robbery, and a guy came in with the gun, and then the police, and there was somebody at the teller's window, and then there was a teller, and the police came in, and in order to stop the money from being handed over, instead of shooting the bad guy, they shot the teller because the teller was holding the money. So that's one way to stop the transfer of the money, but you're shooting the wrong person, right? So same thing goes here in a way, in that you, in a sense, you're doubling down on the evil and the crime, because there's been one violation already. A woman has been violated, and she's now pregnant by rape. But instead of just going after the rapist, what you're doing is you're killing the innocent victim, the second victim of the rape. Because being conceived in rape, although you still have inestimable value and you are still created in the image of God, you're not created in the way that God intended. So it is an affront to the dignity of the newly conceived person to be conceived in rape. So after having suffered that indignity and that affront to the dignity, then to be killed is a second affront to the dignity. To be killed because the way you were conceived was not the usual way, was not the dignified way, and was out of violence. And that in no way helps the woman. It actually scars the woman more psychologically, because now she has to bear two losses. The loss that was taken from her by her being violated, and secondly, the loss of her preborn baby. And so what we have to do is be there for women in a very, very supportive, loving way, to show them that they are not alone, that this abortion is not the only option, that they do have another option, and that is to turn this evil on its head and to meet it with an act of love. And that act of love, of course, is to save the life of the preborn baby that she has in her womb. And love always conquers evil. Whenever we meet evil with love, it will always prevail. but we just have to have the courage to do that. We also have to have the courage to make these arguments, to point out that there are actually two victims, and that killing the second victim makes no sense at all.
Tenny, that help you?
Hello, yes. Thank you very much. God bless.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
I feel like our society is uncomfortable with women, with the heroism of women who carry children to term who are the product of rape or the consequence of rape. But many, many women have done it, and they are heroic, and their stories are heroic. And women are every bit as much the heroes, of history as men are. And we celebrate men's heroism in giving their lives in war, as has been predominantly a male undertaking throughout history and all that. But for some reason, we're supposed to act like it's victimhood when you call women to their heroic role as mothers.
That's right. We're no longer expecting heroism from anybody.
Well, that's the truth, isn't it? Let's go to, but man, there are many women who have heroically carried that child, and they should be celebrated. And it's something that it's kind of like a hidden part of society. But many, many people owe their life to a mother who said, "I'm not attacking the child." Jenny in Nebraska, listening on Facebook Live. Did I say Facebook? Because faith is a word we use around here. Faith, we don't say face that much, but we're people of faith. I pushed the wrong button. Jenny, go ahead with your question.
Hi. I was wondering, we use pigs for, like in vet tech, to relay for like heart valves and everything like that. And there's even an article that says they even been using it to test influenza vaccines. So why are we using preborn children and not the fetal pigs to create a COVID vaccine or any other kind of medical treatment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the reason why, again, there are lots of reasons, but the fundamental reason why they started using human cell cultures was because whenever you're going to use something in a human, you always somehow want to test it in a human, because we have plenty of examples of medications and other treatments that worked well in animals, but when they got to humans, they either had unforeseen side effects or they just didn't work as well. Just because there are differences, sometimes subtle differences, but sometimes big differences in enzymes and other things in the human body compared to other species. So because of that, they did, and as a scientific concept, it makes sense to test things on humans and on human cell cultures. That part is good and it makes a lot of sense scientifically. But what happened was they found easy shortcut ways to create these cell cultures and create immortalized human cell lines by taking cells from aborted babies. They could have used human adult cells. There was a very long-standing, that's still available cell line called the HeLa cell line that was taken from a woman who had a lymphoma, and they took some cells from her lymphoma and created an immortal cell line. But what happened was that they didn't have the ethical boundaries. And when you don't have ethical boundaries, then you tend to wander to do anything you think might be helpful in a utilitarian way. And so that's what led these scientists to do that. And probably, I don't want to make any assumptions, but maybe I should say possibly, some of them really had a callous disregard for life. And so it didn't matter to them that they were taking... that they were actually cooperating very closely in an abortion and actually at the bedside or the operating room table where the abortion was performed, and in a way kind of scheduling it to be at that very abortion because that woman had the fetus or the embryo at the very age that they wanted. So it was something that was very much arranged. So then once they got started and they saw that it was useful for them scientifically, then other scientists would use them and become dependent on them. Then they would come to accept it, and because it became more ubiquitous, and it has become ubiquitous in scientific research. And then when something's accepted and ubiquitous, then you kind of lose, even if you are a moral person, you kind of lose your objection to it. And just like you can see in our society, how if you took someone from the 1950s and dropped him or her into our society right now, they'd be appalled at what they would hear and see on TV videos, on computer games, on the computer, of what people wear on the street, of how people act, of the low percentage of couples getting married, the abortions, all sorts of things, right? So you get morally desensitized when these things are accepted and become ubiquitous. So that has kind of led to where we are now. I hope that answers your questions, although it was kind of long-winded.
And Jenny, I'm going to leave it there because I got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Pro-Life Open Forum with Dr. George Delgado. If you have a question about the proper treatment or respectful treatment of life in any of its stages and conditions, you are welcome to call. Haven't had any, I don't believe, end-of-life questions yet today, but I want to remind you that those are welcome as well. 888-318-7884.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Turn to Mary, the Mother of God, for help bearing witness to the gift of life with the National Life Rosary. Designed exclusively for EWTN by premier Italian rosary maker Gorelli, in collaboration with renowned Catholic sculptor Timothy Schmalz. Help build a culture of life with the National Life Rosary. Available now at EWTNRC.com. Order your National Life Rosary today.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul's Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Dr. George Delgado is our guest, and if you have questions about the proper treatment of life at any stage, you're welcome to call because it's a pro-life open forum. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. I haven't mentioned this yet today, but this is September now. That means this month is our big conference here in San Diego, and there are still spaces available. As a matter of fact, quite a few spaces available. We're contracted for 1,000, and I think we're in the low 600s or something. It's been a crazy year. We expected that, but we just want you to know we still got room for you. Just go to CatholicAnswersConference.com. Lots of great speakers, and you can't beat the topic. We're going to do 3 days of discussions, conversations, and prayer to Jesus. Who do you say that I am is the theme of the conference, September 23rd through 26th, right here in San Diego. CatholicAnswersConference.com. More questions here for Dr. Delgado, so let's go back to the phones. Oil City, Pennsylvania. I didn't even know there was an Oil City, Pennsylvania. That is now my favorite town name in Pennsylvania. Listening to EWTN Channel 130 on Sirius XM satellite radio. George in Oil City. Go ahead with your question or comment for Dr. Delgado.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I was listening to your discussion about abortion and rape victims and the like. In my career, although I'm retired now, but 35 years was running the county the County Human Services Agency, which included children and youth. And the only point I wanted to make was relative to adoptions. You know, when we got babies in 0 to 3-year-olds into our children youth system, we could get them adopted out in a minute. We had a miles-long wait list for families, good families wanting to adopt these children. Now, 16-year-old with behavioral problems, well, that's a whole other story. But when it came to babies, regardless if they were, out of incest or abuse or whatever, any kind of baby, we could get adopted out.
Thanks,
Just
George.
wanted to throw that in there,
Yeah, Dr. Delgado?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It really it shows that, and that's been my experience too, that there are many couples out there who can't have children, and some who already have natural children who want to share their families and bring these babies into loving homes. So the woman who does choose life after rape, she does have options, and one is, of course, to raise the child herself with the help of her own family, and the other is to present the child for adoption to another loving family. And as all of you probably know, these days that can be an open adoption, so there can be communication and there can be knowledge of the what's called the birth mother. So there are options, and just because you take away the killing option does not mean that the woman is left without a choice. She does have some very, very good choices that are life-giving choices.
Thanks, George. I really appreciate that. And I think that many young women in particular who, this is a surprise, to them, many young women, they don't know that you can meet prospective families. You can, your child can be placed in the home of your choosing. They don't realize how adoption works, and what they definitely probably don't realize is what joy they are bringing to a family by carrying that child to term.
For of families we had, I'm talking, we're in a small county here of 60,000, well 50,000 now, and the wait list we would have for babies would be well into the hundreds of families wanting to adopt.
Yeah. All right. Right. And so that means that young woman can the choices, the options for her as far as placing that child are really varied enough that she can know for certain that she's placing the child well. Thanks, George.
Exactly.
God bless you. Thanks very much for that. As adoptive father, I got to tell you, the idea departs very quickly. Every adoptive parent has the same fear I had. I'm sure. Like, am I going to feel like the father to this child? As soon as they start misbehaving, you feel like the father. So you can be certain of that. Cindy in Michigan, listening on 990 AM. You are next. Cindy, go ahead with your question for Dr. George Delgado.
Yeah, I remember hearing when the Affordable Health Care was being proposed that there was a professor from one of the Ivy Leagues who was working on finding a formula to determine who was worthy of care. And I was wondering if you had heard anything about that or where I could find more information.
No, I haven't heard of that specifically, but there were different algorithms being developed that would try to predict who would benefit the most from medical care and then have certain limits imposed. So, for example, they would put in, your age, how sick you were with other diseases. And let's say someone two patients needed a kidney transplant. One was 45 and was otherwise very healthy. The other one was 65, but also was a smoker and maybe had high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and was overweight or something. They would put those in an algorithm, and of course the one who was younger and healthier would come out the winner of the kidney. So certain things like that were being put forth, and so that's where they got the name the death panels, because of the proposition that they would have local medical boards making decisions like this, picking who would get health care and who not. So that, and I think there were several proponents of that within the people planning the Affordable Care Act. Of course, the backlash that they received led them to quietly put that away. It does remind me of when you said that people deserve medical care, that there was a certain person who's become very influential in our country who felt that certain people didn't deserve the right to live if they were black or if they were mentally handicapped. And that, of course, that person was she called these people the weeds of the human race, and that was Margaret Sanger.
Oh, yes.
So lots of people don't know about that, but this is something now that Planned Parenthood itself is now coming to reckon with it, that their founder, and they are now quietly taking down statues of her and awards that are named after her being changed because they finally see that that's not so politically correct anymore. Especially when you see that the fruits of her labor are that although blacks compose about 13% of our population, something like 45 to 48% of all abortions are committed on black women. So almost 3 times disproportionate number of abortions compared to their population, and the fact that they disproportionately place their abortion centers in low-income minority neighborhoods.
Cindy, I think one of the names you might be looking for is Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel from Harvard University.
Wouldn't surprise me, yeah.
Thank you.
But it's just so. Listening to some of the commentary today, Doctor, about the abortion thing, and people just openly saying on the TV news, the women who need these abortions are Hispanic and Black women. These are the women that are going to be missing this opportunity for abortion, and you feel like that is such a revealing statement that the children that we really need to abort are Black children and Hispanic children.
That's exactly it.
Go ahead.
It's all part of their business model, and now they're going to see the pain in the revenue stream, and so that they'll come at us with anything they can to try to convince us that these women need to have abortions.
Patricia in Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Go ahead with your question for Dr. George Delgado.
I'm a Christian, but if like say like you knew you were going to solitary confinement for 5 years with nothing, maybe a little bit of food once a day through a slit in the door, you didn't have a Bible, you had nothing to write with. I mean, absolutely nothing. You're just on a slab in confinement, and you had the chance to get someone to shoot you and kill you or something like that. Would that be wrong, or would God expect you to endure something like that, or something terribly abusive or something?
Okay, great question. Thank you, Patricia. Dr. Delgado?
Well, I think the way to look at that is anytime you would cooperate or arrange any kind of harm to yourself, including and especially death, would not be morally acceptable if that was the primary aim. To give one's life to save the life of another, of course, that's a whole different story. But this would be arranging someone to kill you in order to stop your suffering. That, it really is analogous to euthanasia, where you have a sick person who's suffering and then requests physician-assisted suicide or requests euthanasia. And so that is not morally acceptable, because life is a great gift from God, and we are called to be stewards of that life, not masters of the life. And to be a steward of a life means to do what you can within reason to protect your life without harming others. And yes, we are called to take up our crosses. Jesus said use those exact words in the gospel. And sometimes taking up our cross is pretty easy in these days, but sometimes it can be very, very difficult. And if you're incarcerated in solitary confinement, I could see that would be a very difficult cross to bear. But still, it would be a cross that Jesus would bear with you or with that person and carry most of the load if we were to trust in him.
Patricia, thanks. It's also a firm part of Catholic teaching, moral teaching, that to torment a prisoner is absolutely morally forbidden. So that situation is horrific, and I know that it exists, but I just want to make sure that both sides of that are covered, that we don't have the right to take our own life, but neither do we have the right to torment a prisoner. And unfortunately, that is exactly what happens in many cases here and around the world because we're fallen human beings. Dr. George Delgado, thank you so much. I really enjoyed spending an hour with you.
It's been great. Good to be here.
Tomorrow, let's just do 2 hours before, Darren. Let's just leave it open for them. Anybody can call with any question they want. That way, we'll put good use to Jimmy Aiken, because Jimmy's in tomorrow, right? All right. Well, we'll see you then, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.